Today's guest is Tim Doyle. Tim Doyle is a chartered accountant and director at Doyle Accountants, specializing in crypto taxation in New Zealand. Since 2017, he's advised clients on IRD audits, tax structuring, and building ruling, and has consulted with Inland Revenue on digital asset policy. He brings over a decade of small to medium enterprise SME and international finance experience, and outside of work, he is an Ironman World Championship qualifier. And just before we get started, I want to express that this discussion includes insights from non-affiliated third parties and key opinion leaders. Binance provides this platform for informational and educational purposes only and is not responsible for any content or insights provided. This information should not be considered financial, tax, or investment advice from Binance. So now with all that out of the way, let's get into it. First, to get started, how did you get involved in all things crypto and crypto tax?
Yeah, thanks, Sam, and thanks for having me on. It's exciting to be here. How I got started, well, it was actually back in 2017 for me, and I had a couple of friends, and they were involved in mining Bitcoin. And I remember going to their house and walking into one of their rooms, and it was just full of these mining rigs making all these humming noises with all the fans going. I'm like, what are you guys up to? Like, it was something like from the future. And anyway, they told me they had been doing it, making some money from it. They told me about Bitcoin and introduced me to it. And from that moment, I was hooked. So went home, read everything I could. At that stage, you couldn't really talk to many other people about it. And started buying and selling crypto and made a lot of money, lost a lot of money. It was sort of a bit of the ICO phase back then. And like I remember waking up at the middle of the night, looking at Twitter, making some trades and just thinking that I was 10 foot tall and bulletproof, but that turned out to be not the case. And certainly once you go through a cycle, you tend to learn a lot. And then the end of the financial year came around, and at this point in time, I'd been back in New Zealand for just over a couple of years. I just bought in as a director in the first company that I was part of. And I was like, oh, I've got a bit of a tax liability here. And
Indeed.
then I had to spend the next month kind of unwinding all of these transactions that I had made and trying to follow through the micro nature of cryptocurrency. And I finally got there, but I thought, Jeepers, if I've done this, I'm not the only person in this position. Someone else is going to have a bit of a tax admin nightmare here as well. And that's when sort of the penny dropped that there were other taxpayers in the same situation as me, just bought into an accounting firm and had a bit of direction of the marketing and started publishing a few articles online. And that's how really the crypto tax side of our business got started.
Oh, fantastic. The key question I want to ask you is that what are the key taxable events that any crypto investor in New Zealand should be aware of when it comes to tax?
Oh, well, I think the obvious one is when you dispose the crypto itself. And that isn't necessarily for fiat, but it's also for other tokens. So if you've purchased Ethereum and then you sell it for Solana, you've sold your Ethereum, and that's likely to be a taxable event. Of course, it does depend on why you've acquired it in the first place. And IRD's kind of blanket default rules is that most people have acquired cryptocurrency with an intention to dispose of. And they've taken that position because unlike a car or a house, there's no private utility. For example, with that car and a house, you get the transport or you get the house to live in. Whereas crypto, you don't get any personal benefit from holding it. And unlike a share in a New Zealand company that might earn dividend income, you generally don't receive an income from crypto. So the dominant intention is normally to dispose of, and that's why it's taxable. So the obvious one's disposing that crypto for another token. Of course, there are some other events, disposing NFTs, or if you enter some of these more complicated DeFi arrangements, such as the collateral finance loan. We were looking at one just today, and the client had put up their Bitcoin as the collateral, and therefore had borrowed against it. And he was of the opinion that, no, I haven't disposed my crypto. The whole intention of it was not to dispose of it. But we actually, when you looked under the hood and saw the terms and conditions of the loan by placing the Bitcoin into the custodial wallet, part of the terms and agreements were you give up all ownership rights and control to the lender. So if you're giving up all ownership and control of your crypto, that is going to be a disposal for tax purposes, even though it's an unintended consequence of it. So, yeah, there's a few intricacies, and you've really got to dig under the hood a little bit. But for the majority of people buying and selling, they're going to know because it's going to be when they dispose their crypto, which is normally to another token as part of a trade or a transaction, or going back to fiat as well.
Yeah, absolutely. What about stable coins? Because stable coins are pegged to US dollar or New Zealand dollar or euro or whichever currency they might be
Yeah,
pegged to.
that's yeah,
Purely for utility. And so I run a podcast, I have employees overseas. It generates revenue which comes in stable coins, and then I use that revenue to pay off. In that sort of a case, how would IRD see it as where it's break even?
yeah. It's not very favorable cryptocurrency from a New Zealand tax perspective. And look, we've had multiple engagements with the ID to try and work on these tax rules to get them more palatable or more favorable, whether there's a de minimis.
Yes.
In regards of stable tokens, you've got to understand that you're still buying cryptocurrency, you're still buying personal property, which is still taxable under this particular part of the Act, and you're still buying it with an intention to dispose of. So therefore, it's still covered under part of CB4 of this tax act. So even though its nature by design is to not make any profits or losses, and the reality is that you probably won't, or they'll be quite immaterial because they should mirror foreign currency gains or losses. The reality is that they're still going to be taxable. So in the case of if you acquire USDT and then you dispose of it, any increase or decrease in value is still going to be taxable because you have on the basis that you're acquiring the cryptocurrency with an intention to dispose of it, with the intention to use it. So if we wind back the clock to 2018, when we were talking about this with IRD, there were a lot of the ICO crazes that I was going to get this token to then utilize this token as a utility. And if you think about, I don't know, any sort of token there was file token and all these other tokens that were going to be these utility type of tokens. But the reality was, in IRD's position is, even if you're going to dispose of it to utilize it as a utility, well, you're still having to spend it and get rid of it. And that would be the taxable event. So any increase in the value of it since you acquired it would still be taxable. So it's not that favorable from a New Zealand investing perspective.
Yeah, I mean, for me, I can completely understand for regular tokens that are not which are not stable coins, their values do fluctuate drastically. So yes, they would be, but in a stable coins, it would be the foreign currency exchange rate.
Yeah, and you're only talking about the foreign currency. Yeah.
Which would be minimal. So so that does make sense. How does then IRD view things like staking and some of these DeFi staking, restaking, liquid staking, those type of things?
Yeah, so the staking income is taxable income. So say you've got 32 Ethereum and you're running a node and you earn 0.05 Ethereum every couple of days or every week or so. So that Ethereum that you're earning from running the node or farming or staking is taxable income to you. And the value of income is equivalent to the New Zealand dollars of the market value of the tokens that you're receiving in New Zealand dollars. So if you're staking cryptocurrency and you're receiving one ABC token every day, well, that one ABC token is income to you, and the value of that income is the New Zealand dollar equivalent on the day that you received it. So you could have thousands of these transactions over the course of a 12-month financial year, and we'd take every transaction, convert it to New Zealand dollars on the day that you earned it or received it or took ownership and control of it, and that would be your staking income that you'd return as part of your tax return for the year.
That makes sense. What about like things like airdrops or like airdrop farming or things like that, or point farming these days?
Yeah, there's so many different activities out there.
Yes,
So
there are.
airdrops, yeah, airdrops are a little bit different. You first need to determine if you're in business or if you're an investor. So there's actually different tax treatments depending on what kind of line you are or what's your activity. For the Joe Bloggs type of investor, if they're not doing anything to acquire that airdrop, it's non-taxable to them on receipt of it. So if you have, say, an Ethereum wallet on MetaMask and you're just getting these tokens deposited into your wallet and you're not doing anything for them, they're non-taxable rewards that you're receiving. Now that's at the point of receipt. When you still dispose of the tokens, that's when the taxable event is. So an example of that would be the Uniswap airdrop, which happened a few years ago. Most people
Yes.
with an Ethereum wallet who had used Uniswap got, I think, about 200 or 400 Uniswap tokens. When they received those tokens, provided that they weren't in the business of dealing in crypto, they were an investor, that the receipt of that token was non-taxable, but when they disposed of them, the full proceeds from the sale were income to them. So you've got to kind of have an understanding, are you an investor, are you in business, and therefore just go through a series of steps to determine how they're taxed.
Yeah, yeah, that's right. Yeah, that does make sense. I mean, I knew people who ran like these. I mean, not in New Zealand, overseas airdrop farms, and who were just like had employees, and they were doing like multiple employees and lots of computers, and were just farming
Yeah.
airdrops
So
and all
that's
that. That
that
would be like
activity
a
sounds more
business.
like a business. Yeah. So
Yes,
in that case, they'll all be taxable on receipt because they're running a business to receive them. So yeah.
yes. What are some sort of like key mistakes you see Kiwis making when it comes to crypto taxes?
Yeah, I think most of the mistakes are around of lack of understanding or not necessarily a yeah, we don't do too much in terms of as far as the implementation of buying and selling crypto. So I'm sure there's mistakes such as you guys probably see this putting in wrong wallet addresses or transferring the wrong tokens on the wrong network. So I'll leave that kind of crypto specific stuff to the experts there. But the common tax mistakes are around not necessarily understanding how the legislation applies. So quite often we'll see people say, "Oh, I think I only pay tax when I convert to fiat." And we're like, well, no, every taxable event, every swap or transaction is a taxable event, not only when you convert out to fiat.
Mhm.
Or they think that maybe unrealized gains or losses are taxable to them. So they might have purchased Bitcoin at the height of the market just recently back in February for 170,000 New Zealand dollars, and at March it was 150 or 140,000 New Zealand dollars. They think that they can claim that loss, which is unrealized, but it's actually only realized gains and losses that are taxable or tax deductible. So that the gain is crystallized or the loss is realized when you dispose of the crypto. So that's a couple of common ones. The one that I mentioned earlier, the collateral finance loans, thinking that that's not a disposal, that's quite common. Um, or the classic, oh, there's no specific income tax legislation that applies, therefore I'm not captured. Well, it's these more general concepts that apply in the Income Tax Act. Like there's no specific income tax legislation that applies to accountants or butchers or bakeries or plumbers. It's these general principles, and it's exactly the same for crypto. And I still think that there's a few people out there that think, oh, IRD will never know, right? But I think we're seeing now that IRD can go to, well, I know that for a matter of a fact, they've got all of New Zealand's cryptocurrency exchange data. They've written to the likes of Binance and others to obtain that data, and through no fault of Binance or the others, they have to release that information. There's no protection there. So there's also something called the Crypto Asset Reporting Framework, which is coming in shortly, where all countries in the OECD are going to share cryptocurrency information, and then we're governed by AML and KYC. So
Absolutely.
IRD has this information already, and the reality is that they've targeted this area because they know that there's the lack of compliance. So that's probably one of the other big misconceptions that we see as well.
Yes, I can. Yeah, I know for sure that like just globally all around the world, there is a lack of compliance when it comes to crypto and Web3 assets or like just digital assets, especially at the retail level, not at the at institutional level, because institutional level you can hire accountants and you can have access to more, I don't know, knowledge, guidance, and advice.
Oh, there's a higher level of governance. Yeah.
Yes, higher level of
Yeah.
exactly right. Higher level of governance. Yeah, you're 100% right with that. What are some others sort of like changes you have seen recently when it comes to all things sort of crypto and tech and Web3? Anything else you have seen overseas that something that we can learn from in New Zealand?
I, I think a couple of things come to mind there. One is just the nature of these cycles and just the psychology behind these cycles. Mentioned it right at the start. When the market's going up, we all think that we're 10 foot tall and bulletproof and be making these awesome decisions. They just challenge people to think how much of that is luck and how much of that skill and how much of that is in your control and how much of that is in the right decision making or just market movements. So we've seen this time and time again. We see that crypto goes up and more people chase it, and then crypto goes down, and they just get their timing back to front. We see so many people with the wrong timing. And again, not my specialty, but it just seems to everyone tends to play the emotional card when the market's going all over the place. So that's sort of something that I thought after the first or second cycle people would have learned or caught on now, but we're still seeing the same mistakes time and time again, which I just find curious and interesting. But coming back to your questions about these trends, I guess like the crypto journey that we've seen since 2017 has largely been sort of different phases. So we saw when I was first getting involved, the bull market of 2017. Then we saw this ICO craze. Then we saw a bit of a bear market. Then we saw these NFTs take off, and that was new and exciting. Then we had DeFi and like we've been talking about the Pancake Swap, Uniswap, all the different blockchains rolling out on different networks, Binance Smart Chain, etc. And then more recently, we've seen these meme tokens take off as well. And then we've seen the market expand again, going back to like 2021, then it contracted, and now we've seen it expand again. And we talk about this Bitcoin dominance and this alt run season that's yet to come this time around. So there's just this constant wave that's kind of there's something on the horizon that's going to pop up in the next 6 months, and we don't even know what it is today, which is pretty exciting, but also, I guess, from a business perspective, it can be quite scary as well. So the one thing for people to be aware of that is that just around their record keeping, like when NFTs came along, we didn't know how to record keep on them because it's so new and the technology changes so fast, the accounting record keeping doesn't keep up with it. So yeah, so those are the trends. More recently, in the Web3 space, we've started to see a little bit of tokenization of property, which is exciting, and some more use cases of actually using blockchain as more an investment-centric kind of vehicle rather than just as a use case of being a utility similar to money. We're seeing it more to hold equity or shares and particularly syndications or offerings going forward. So that can't speak too much about those, but that's really exciting to be a part of and when they launch soon. And that's going through FMA approval with those prospective clients. So yeah, that's a bit of an overview of what I'm seeing and what's happening. But I still think there's another big thing like the NFTs or like this DeFi that we just don't know about yet. Yeah. And it might even combine something with AI. I don't know. That seems to be the other.
Yeah, the latest trend everywhere is like the AI agent startups, and then fractionalizing or not fractionalizing, but then having those agents have like their unique identity on the blockchain, just like an NFT, which you can then trade those agents and things like that, or those agents can go and generate an income for you, and that is another whole new gray area, and like what jurisdiction those agents are
Totally.
in, because they live
Yeah.
on the blockchain. Who taxes them? What tax rate applies? Are they taxed as a human,
Oh,
as an
and
entity,
this
as
is,
a...
yeah, same with DAOs as well. Like,
Yes.
whereabouts are DAOs taxed and how are they taxed, and so forth. And again, one of those iterations is like, now we're seeing the Bitcoin ETFs and
Yeah.
companies available to invest in, like MicroStrategy. And there's a very big
Yes.
difference between owning the underlying cryptocurrency and owning shares in a company. And they're taxed very differently as well. But in some ways, when you mention these ETFs, it's like the OGs from back in 2017. They were kind of anti-government, anti-centralization, not your keys, not your crypto. Um, Yet owning shares in a company that owns an ETF is incredibly centralized, and your
Yes.
trust is in a director of a company to own the cryptocurrency. So we're getting back to like a Celsius or an FTX situation where we're relying on individuals to be the custodial and the director of companies to safeguard those investments. So it's an interesting space.
It is absolutely, because like I feel like at the end of the day, everyone wants to just make money. And that takes precedence over decentralization.
And pay as little
it-
tax as possible.
yes, yes. Are there any particular benefits for a blockchain or a crypto or a Web3 related business to operate in New Zealand compared to um, other countries?
Um, Not really. I think when you've got to decide what jurisdiction to domicile, and there's a lot of different factors that go into that decision. I
Hmm.
think certainly tax is probably one lens of how to make that decision, but also looking at legislation, regulation, etc. But normally, where that decision comes from is where the founders are tax residents and where the founders will be operating their business from. So that's why you normally see New Zealand businesses that operate in New Zealand are registered New Zealand companies. And we don't normally have too many other businesses that operate out. Well, in Australia, we have had several Australian businesses want to access the New Zealand market, and therefore they'll get in touch with us as New Zealand crypto tax accountants to incorporate New Zealand entities as a vehicle to operate their business from. But if you're not operating a business in New Zealand, you wouldn't have a New Zealand entity.
Yeah, that does make sense, which I have also um, noticed or seen that yeah, that is generally the case. And are there any sort of tools or I don't know, systems or anything that you would recommend for people to sort of track and report their crypto activity?
Yeah, I think probably a different take on the answer to that question is I'd really encourage the listeners to think about their strategy. So
Mm.
why have they purchased crypto in the first place? Is it a store of wealth? How long is their investment horizon for? Is it for trading? Is it for long term? Is it so? Whereas we see a lot of, I think I mentioned, we see a lot of clients move crypto back and forth, hundreds of different tokens, thousands of different trades, multiple different wallets and exchanges. But when we look back in hindsight, the data shows that they would have been better off holding one or two tokens. So my view around that question is to have a really clear strategy. If you're invested here, if you're making this investment because you believe it's the future and it's going to be there for the next 20 or 30 years, well, what are you doing touching it every day, sort of thing. But again, not really my cup of tea, more focus on the tax. So coming back to your questions around tracking and reporting, my recommendation would be limit your activity to a small handful of tokens. Then when it comes to tax time and compliance, there's less for you or less for us as accountants to administer. Rather than using 10 different exchanges and 10 different wallets, simplify it down. So you've got a fiat on-ramp and off-ramp, maybe one exchange, and if you want to do DeFi, one DeFi platform. So just keep it really simple. The thing with crypto is it's very easy, it's exciting, it's enjoyment to sit behind a computer, to figure things out, to click lots of buttons and make lots of trades, and the highs are highs and get the excitement. But again, you're creating this dog's breakfast to unravel behind the scenes from a compliance and an administration perspective. And when you do that, your risk profile, if IID was to look at it, goes up and up and up, because despite this kind of thing that we think that all the transactions are recorded on the blockchain, it's really difficult sometimes to understand some of these transactions. Like, unlike a bank statement where you have the date, the amount, who it's to, what it's for, you just see 15 days ago, 37 Dogecoin went to this wallet address, and you're like, what's going on here? And you've got no idea.
Exactly
So
right.
yeah, so listeners need to keep, if particularly in a case like Binance, we can get all the exchange trading records from CSV files and APIs, so we can clearly see what the transactions
Yes.
are. But particularly in the case of the more DeFi or just a general sort of wallet, it's what's actually going on, and perhaps keep a diary. Sometimes it can help even to keep records of your thought process or what you're doing there or what you think is going to happen, so you can go back and check that. So yeah, that's a bit of an overview on recommendations there to track and to report and to keep things simple as possible. But obviously, they need to consider that with their risk and investment strategy and what they think is going to happen in the market too.
That does make a lot of sense, that limiting your activities to as few tokens as possible and as few exchanges or entities as possible, so then it is easier to to track and show, because yes, everything is a transaction ID, and I mean that's the joy of decentralization, and then you have to track from one transaction ID to other, and
look,
all that.
just to play a devil's advocate on that position, the other side of the coin is to go and make as much money as you possibly can, because at the end of the day, the tax is only a percentage of what you have to pay. So if you can grow the pie bigger, yes, the percent of tax that you might pay might be higher, but the pie left over for you would still be bigger. So it's always the balancing effect between what's simple and what's effective and what's easiest to keep you compliant versus recognizing opportunities and making market money in the market. So I totally get both sides of the coin there.
I mean, it will come down to the strategy that the individual is, or the retail or whoever the investor is, even non-retail investor, that that they are comfortable with, or that they know and that they can execute. But yeah, it will depend from case to case basis. And then I know some people who have done exceptionally well, who have just invested in Bitcoin and nothing else. And there's some who have done exceptionally well when they've invested in all sorts of, 200 different coins. But it all comes down to the knowledge level and what they know and what they're comfortable with, and which is very, very individual. Just on an since you work in this field, have you seen more? How do you feel like the adoption is going on in New Zealand? Do you feel like it's growing? It is, or the growth is slowing, or anything what are you seeing in the market?
At the moment, we're seeing quite a large kind of increase in our client numbers. That's partly due to what happens in the market. So believe it or not, probably common sense. If the market goes up, our phones start ringing. If the market goes down, the phone doesn't ring. So I think that shows that adoption at the moment is mostly around it being a speculative investment to make money from. And I think that when that changes to more some longer term use cases like the tokenizations or syndication of properties or investments, that's when we'll see this kind of more high level uptake. Whereas at the moment, a lot of the activity that we've seen is more around people wanting to make money. So yeah, I think it steadily has increased though since 2017. When I first started in 2017, it was predominantly males, and it was predominantly people around my age demographic between 30 and 40. Whereas now, I think if we look at it, yeah, there's still a little bit of that demographic, but certainly the baby boomers are a lot more involved, and it's probably more 50-50 male and female. So your Binance, I'm sure, would have some data on that, user profiles and that kind of stuff as well. But we're certainly seeing a lot more of the baby boomers come in at probably like a higher amount of capital invested as well.
Oh, absolutely. And that trend is not just in New Zealand. Just earlier I was sharing that I'm currently in Dubai. I was covering, I run another podcast. I was covering the Token 2049 event. And then I was just meeting people, and there's these people I met who run educational sort of classes to teach people about crypto and trading and those type of things. They have hundreds or probably thousands of students here, like locally. They run physical, like not online, physical classes to teach people about all these like new tech. And they said that 80-90% of their class is just women who have time as well as disposable income. And a lot of them might be housewives, some are working part-time, but they want to learn more about all these things. And he say it has changed so much. Back in the days, it used to be the other way around.
Yeah.
And it's definitely changing. It is going I mean, in some parts of the world, it is definitely going a lot more mainstream. What do you think can be done in New Zealand to, I don't know, increase its adoption or education around it?
Oh, I think it's that later piece, that education piece. It
Yeah,
has to be. There's so many, not only crypto related, although crypto definitely is at the forefront of mind, but there's so many scams. I've seen so many people lose money from crypto. Um,
100%.
it has to be that education piece. And I think building trust, building confidence, having that understanding, that's what's going to drive more adoption to it, and having the use cases behind it and making it easy. So all of those things. Yeah, and perhaps some more friendly tax legislations or some changes there, such as like a de minimis threshold. So if you've got less than maybe $50,000 or $80,000 worth of crypto, you only pay tax on fiat rather than looking at every crypto to crypto transactions, because it is not very favorable. It is very compliance heavy, and there's not really much benefit. So if there was some sort of de minimis threshold, I think that would help. But certainly that education piece as well. And I don't know, maybe if I think a few years back we saw the government inquiry into crypto. It was disappointing to see that like New Zealand was sitting on a platter there, that they could have potentially relaxed some legislation around it and made sort of New Zealand a really crypto-free country that would have attracted some new investment and opportunities, but that hasn't happened. So I think a part of it is from government and legislation, but the other part of it is the education piece as well.
Oh, 100%. Yeah, I completely agree. And that's where I feel like where established crypto businesses, like whether it's Binance or others, can play a role in as well, like with things like this, like a podcast to talk about and educate people around crypto and what is happening. And you know that there are people like you who can help them with tax related things, as well as we have. And yeah, where do you see the rest of the year going? And and what's next for you guys at crypto tax?
Yeah, well, hopefully we see a bit of a, I don't know, your crystal ball's as good as mine. That's what I say to my clients. I'm not into making predictions. Definitely, and I've been wrong in the past. So no predictions from me. What's next for us is the financial year's just ended, 31st of March. So we're at the moment preparing lots of financial statements and tax returns for our clients. So that will be us for the rest of this year. We've had quite a few new clients on board, which has been great. So getting to know them, preparing their tax calculations. I think when a lot of clients work with us for the first time, they sort of, the penny drops and they actually understand the complexities around what's involved, and that actually helps them make better decisions going forward. So that's where we're at the moment, just head down, preparing these financial statements, tax planning for next year, making sure that everyone's got really clear around how much money they've made, where it is, what those tax payments look like coming up, and have a plan to make them so there's no surprises, and be compliant with inland revenue. So that's our focus moving forward.
That's fantastic. Where do people find you if they want to reach out to you and connect with you or ask you for any advice?
Probably the best way is on our crypto specific website, which is cryptocurrencytax.co.nz. We are part of Doyle Accountants, which also has its own website. So just doyleaccountants.co.nz. We've got an office in Cambridge, but we've got a few team who work remotely for us as well and have clients all around New Zealand. So just get in touch and we can work together from there.
Oh, that's fantastic. Thank you. Thank you so much, Tim, for
You're welcome. Great to
sharing
be a part of it.
everything about how to navigate this space. And yeah, looking forward to doing this again in few months' time and seeing what has changed and how, and sharing like how people are navigating around crypto tax in New Zealand, as well as maybe some case studies that I might have from overseas as well. So thank you so much for your time again. It's been an absolute pleasure talking with you.
You're welcome. Thanks very much, Sam.
Thank you for tuning in to this conversation with Binance New Zealand. Make sure to subscribe, follow, and engage with Binance New Zealand on social media. You can find us on Twitter at Binance_NZL or on Instagram, Binance New Zealand, one word. As well as you can also go to our website at binance.com. And finally, please note that this discussion includes insights from non-affiliated third parties and key opinion leaders. Binance provides this platform for informational and educational purposes only and is not responsible for any content or insights provided. This information should not be considered as financial, tax, or investment advice from Binance.